Hey guys, how are you ladies? Today we'll continue from last time session, which we used to call it unit circle. Now we have here back the unit circle, all right? And as you can tell, 1 is 0 degrees or 360 for rotation. The coordinates are 1 and 0. And we said before that cosine 0 is 1, sine 0 or 360 is a 0. Likewise, when I say what's cosine 270? 0, and cosine 270, sine 270 minus 1. And you can use a calculator. Now, what I want to do today is to draw or have a sketch of both functions, the sine function and the cosine function. Let's start by testing something. Let's draw this one first. So what is sine 0? 0. The highest point here, it's 1. So I'm going to call this here 1. And this is the y-axis. And the lowest point here, it's a negative 1. This is 180, 360. And I divide it into equal 270. You can say 90 or pi over 2, 180 pi, and 2 pi, and 3. And you can go backward that way. If this is 90, this is negative 90, and so on. So this axis is called theta, or maybe time, or maybe x values, whatever the situation. So my target here is what? I want to draw the function f of theta equals sine theta. So let's do it with the blue line. So the question starts first. What is sine of 0? You should have said 0. This is 1. What is sine of 90? Which one is 9? 1. This is 1. So it's here. And what is sine 180? Oh, it's 0 again. And what is sine of 270? Why sine? Because the second one is sine. Remember last time? It's a negative 1. So when it's 270, negative 1. And what is sine full cycle 2 pi or 360? This is the sine back again to 0. Remember, when you connect these points, they have to be smooth, no straight lines. So I could take more angles, like 30 and 45 and 60. At the end, it's going to be like this. Simple, smooth curve. Passing through 0. Simple, smooth curve. Well, that's called one cycle, one oscillation. It can go more and more and more. So, this is called periodic function. It keeps going that way, and can go backward, like the circle. Can rotate at once and again and again. So the more it rotates, the more it goes that way. If you go backwards, like going clockwise, then it will go this way, backward. All right. Now, what do you notice about that function? The highest point is 1 and the lowest point negative 1. We call that an amplitude. So the amplitude of this function, it means it's the highest point that you can get either way. And the amplitude is always positive. No matter if it's minus 1 or plus 1. At the end of the game, it's always 1. Now, a full cycle means a period. All right? So what do you notice this period? This period is exactly 360 degrees. I can go more, then you will have more period, right? So the period is fixed in this situation. And this period is affected by the number in here, multiplied by the theta, okay? So there's a rule in general. What is that rule? If I'm looking for a period in any function, then take 360 and divide it by the number that in front of the theta. So I can rewrite this one again like that one. I could have said sine c theta. C is a number. This is the one who controls, this one who finds out for us the period. It can always be positive. Doesn't matter if it's negative, it's gotta be positive at the end. Okay, so we talked about the period. By the way, what is the highest point you can get to? Of this function, the highest point is called the maximum. So the maximum value of the function f of theta, it is simply 1. Why? The minimum value of this function is negative 1. What do we get from both of these? Aha. From both of these, I can get something. This is called the range. And you all know the range is the y values. So the maximum value in here, it's a 1, while the minimum value is -1. So the range of this function, which is called f of x, f of theta, f of t, it always goes between -1 and 1. And that's the y value. Simple, quick discussion about that function. Let's look at the second part of the function. Let's look at cosine function. I will draw with you. So, what's cosine the angle 0? You would said 1. Okay, here we go. What is the cosine of 90 or pi over 2? I could label this axis in terms of radians like this, like that. This is 2 pi. 2 pi plus pi, 3 pi over 2, halfway. And so on. And I can go backward, negative pi over 2. That's if you go clockwise. Remember last time? So gentlemen, ladies, what is the cosine of 90? That one 0 over here. And what is cosine of 180? This one, this one. Let's double check. Oh, the first one is cosine because that's x. So the cosine of 180 is -1. Then I come here. Okay, the cosine, what did I get? Okay, it's here. -1. So cosine, I'm sorry, I made a mistake because this falls down. So, let's do it again. The cosine of 270 is 0. 0. So no red stuff here. Make sure it's blue so you don't get mixed up. All right, gentlemen. And let's look at the last one. The cosine of 360. That one, 1. That one. So let's connect these things. If you would draw a curve, make sure your hand is inside the curve. All right? So at 180, we said the cosine is what? -1. Oops, it's common sense. It's somewhere here. So, and at the end, no straight lines. No that way. It goes with the flow. This is called a full cycle. That's called F. You can call it F, no, because that was F. So I can call it here h of theta equals cosine theta. If this axis is called, if the axis is called x, then you can say h of x. So the variables here are what? H may be the height, maybe represents some other thing, versus x. So this is called the variable. Okay, gentlemen, the same thing again. Let's talk about it. If I ask what is the amplitude, highest thing is 1, lowest is -1. So in this situation, it's the same. What is the period? A full cycle, or distance between two maximum points, or actually the distance between two minimum. So any two consecutive minimum, that's called the period. Any two consecutive maximum, that's called also a period. But if you go 1/4 quadrant, look, this is the first quadrant. It's positive. When you go down, that's the second quadrant. Remember yesterday we said plus, minus, minus, it's negative. I wasn't lying to you. And when you go to the third quadrant, it's -2. Remember what I said yesterday or last time? The cosine negative. And when you go all the way up, that's your fourth quadrant. Okay, so that's your first, that's your second, that's your third, and that's your fourth. It's good to see things when you go to further, it will help you a lot in engineering. And as you notice, the same way for the period, whether sine or cosine, they follow the same. Their period is 360, and the maximum value in this situation, plus and the negative is minimum, so the range is, so whether the function is, ladies and gentlemen, let me fix this one in a better way. Whether it's sine theta or cosine theta, you can never have an answer for the ratio -1. Remember in the trigonometric questions, I told you once before, we can never solve a question like that. We can't. Or maybe 3 over 2. Or maybe minus 2. Or maybe minus 3.7. These numbers are stupid. They are beyond this range. If you are within, you can find the answer. But if you want to check, go ahead. Let's do the first one. Use your calculator. What's the inverse of 1.5 in order to find theta? You have no answer. Check your calculator. So remember, any sine, cosine only. If you have an answer or the ratio of the trig function more than 1 or negative 1, no good. You can't solve it. Simply we say cannot be defined. Let's clean everything. So what we've been doing, we talked about range, domain, all these things. Why don't we now have some example? Something that we really need to have in the exam. Because a smart student will always try to find out how can we find certain issues. I will be testing you in anything related to this material, such as, let me start giving you some questions. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to make a table for you guys. Here I'm going to put the function. Whatever it is, that's your function. Let me start with something. 3 plus 2 sine simply an x. Or let's make it a little funny, 4x. And that function can be written here, y equal. I could say f of x, I could say y. Y could represent height, depth of anything you want. First thing I'm going to ask you, what is the amplitude? Amplitude is the number that is multiplied by the sine or by the cosine or by the tangent. So this is called the amplitude. It can never be negative, remember that. Second thing, how can I find something called the maximum value? No, not yet. Something called the vertical shift. Some people say, what's the vertical shift? Look at that example quickly. I'll have to clean it. You are here. This curve been going up that way. All right? So this value is 3. So this maximum point went all the way up by how much? By 2 units. It went up there by 2. We call this maximum shift. All right? That's called maximum vertical shift. Vertical shift could be positive, could be negative. It means if this point is, let's say, negative 3, how far did you go from 1 to negative 3? You went 1, you went 3, you have 4 units down. This is called vertical shift of negative. So vertical shift could be positive or negative. And where is it in this function? This guy, 3. All right? That's called simply vertical shift Vs. Okay, let's talk about something called the period. And we said the period has a rule, 360 over C. What is C? It's the number that is multiplied by x in the angle. So what is 360 divided by 4? 90. You could have said 90, or you could say pi over 2 radian. That's called the what? The period. So your graph, if you remember, we have it drawn like this at the beginning. Remember today? We have it drawn 360. Oops. That was sine x. What happening here? This period, it's being squeezed 4 times as less as you can. So the graph is not being squeezed halfway, it's here. So the graph looks like this. This graph, the red one is that one. Because why? The period is 90. So a full cycle from here to here is 90 degrees. So half of it is 45, half of 45 is 22.5, and blah, blah, blah. So I can draw 4 periods if I want. 10 periods. See? That's another period. Another period. Another period. Where can I stop? It depends on the domain. If my domain said stop here, then my domain, it's between, what is that point? 270 and 0. So I don't want you to mix up between domain and period. Let's focus on the period. All right, gentlemen, what is the next three things? The next three items, we need to talk about that one so we can do more examples. Let's talk about the maximum value of this function. The maximum value of f of x or f of y. The maximum is simply the vertical shift plus the amplitude. As simple as that. So, the vertical is 3. You can never change it. And the amplitude, it can be either 2 or, if I was looking for the minimum of y, then still the same shift because if it's going up, but is negative 2. Why? Remember in the graph we said, can go up to 2, down to negative 2. This will affect the least value, and this will affect the maximum value. And the answer is 1. Once you got this, I can go for the range. What is my range? The range, values of y, that are between the max of y and the minimum of that value of y. In this situation is what? That's the minimum and that's the maximum. Here we go. That's the first question. All right. Why don't I take an example from your lecture notes, which is at page 18. So this example, I don't want to make it up from here. It's called page 18. There are two questions. We will go from easy to hard, but it's still the same idea. The function is called, is drawn in red, in yellow. G of x equals 4 minus, or 5, is it 4 or 5? Oops, yes. 4 minus 5 cosine of 2x. Let's hit it. What is my amplitude? Everybody will say negative 5. No, my friend. When you take the absolute value, I said it's always positive. Remember that trick. Now, what is my vertical shift? Always whatever the number comes there. Some people draw the question like this. Look. You can put the 4 at the beginning, you can put it at the back, but this got nothing to do with the angle. So don't get mixed up. It's okay, the same thing. All right, so it's 4. What is my period? 360 over the number multiplied by the x, or the theta, which is 2. So the period in this case is 180. You could say it's a pi radian. What is the maximum value? Vertical shift plus amplitude. So what is my vertical shift? It's 5. What is my amplitude? 4 plus 5. What's the minimum? 4 minus 5. All right? So this is 9, and that's negative 1. And my range, it goes from all the way up to 9, all the way down to negative 1. You've got to put equal. You don't put equal, it means you don't learn the game right. All right, there's a harder question over there. Let me copy it down for you. It says, the one drawn with the green, 2 sine pi theta over 3, 2 sine pi theta over 3, all right, minus 10, all divided by 2. And this function is called h of theta. It represents the height of water when it goes high tide and low tide. All right, gentlemen? So, did I cover the question right? Yes. Before I answer the question, let me simplify it further. All of this can be divided by 2. So 2 divided by 2, it's a 1 sine, and the angle, by the way, pi over 3 theta. Like 2 theta, 5 theta. This, if it's understood well, you're okay. What is 10 over 2? Minus 5. So I rewrote the function that way. Now the good question is, what is my amplitude? Amplitude is a number multiplied by sign. Don't ever say 2, because 2 being divided by 2. So the amplitude is 1. And what is the vertical shift? Hey, you're lucky. Whether I write it that way or whether I write it this way. Remember, it doesn't matter. The negative phi stays negative phi. Vertical shift could be positive, could be negative. That's vertical shift. What is my period? We said 360 over theta. But, sorry, over c. But in this situation, we are dealing with things in terms of radians, pi. So I could say 2 pi over theta over c. It doesn't matter which one. Why I'm going to switch to this? Because I'm giving you numbers in terms of pi. So 2 pi over 3. This will go with that. Hold your calculator. The 2 times the 3 is a 6. What else? Oh, the maximum thing. Well, the maximum is the vertical shift, which is minus 5, plus the amplitude once it's a 1 and once is a negative 1 for a minimum value. So what is the answer in this case? Negative 4. What is the answer in this case? Negative 6. So if I want to go, whatever the function, what's the maximum value? Which is larger, the negative 4 or negative 6? Which of them coming closer to 0? The negative 4. That's the biggest you can get to. And what's the smallest value of this function? Negative 6. That's the furthest thing you can get to. All right. So I've hit very much of that. Why don't I draw a nine? Why don't I give it the opposite? I'm going to give you a sketch of any function. Okay, all these, they follow the same thing. This function, I need you to find out the same stuff I just found, but by using a sketch. All right, so you may get a sketch ready for you, and then you are required to answer some questions. All right, so I'm going to choose question 9. All the questions in the reference in the lecture note, they follow the same method. This is your x and y axis. Your graph is going from, the first one is until 180. Look at that one. Okay, I hope I got it right. And then, and so on. This, and the axis is labeled as x. And the vertical axis is labeled as f of x. Or y. The highest points, they all follow a 3. So these points are all a 3. So this one, as I can see from here, it's 2. And the 1, it's somewhere here. So you can reach that one and go up again and go and so on. This is 1, this is 0. Okay? So I have it drawn exactly like the one. Now let's ask 3 questions from our own. First of all, can you tell what is the amplitude? Well, the amplitude is how fat is this up or how down is that one. And by recognition, you can tell this is up by 1, it's so fat up to 1, or go down to 1. But if I want to do some calculation, let me ask you a question first. What is the maximum value of this function? What is the maximum value of f of x? You can see the 3. What is the minimum value of that function? You can all see it, it's all the way down to 1. So if I ask what is the range? Your range is between 3 and 1. That's common sense. You don't need to be smart. But if I want to find the amplitude, it's the maximum one you had minus the minimum value you had over 2. I told you a while ago it was 1. Let me double check in a different way. It's a rule, it's nice to use. 3, the maximum, minus 1 over 2. 2 over 2 is 1. Well, it's right. There's another way to see it, ladies and gentlemen. The distance between the highest point and the lowest point is how much? From 3 to 1 is a 2. 2 divided by 2 is what? 1. So each one of those is 1. That's a third way to see the amplitude. Why don't we go to the second one? How can we find the vertical shift? The vertical shift, actually, if you notice, this function wasn't told if it is sine function or cosine. But actually, to tell you the truth, I did not put at the beginning, this function, it was 2 plus sine 2x. I did not write it because you can answer whatever went from here. I don't want that. Assume it's not here. But at least this is called sine function. So if I'm looking for the vertical shift, take the maximum value, add it to the minimum value, and divide it by 2. The maximum is 3, and plus 1, I think 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Alright? So the function originally was down here, it went up. See, how was it? The function was like that. Okay? It went from 1 to 3 and all the way up. So it's been taken up by 2. It's the best way is to use the rule in case you had a curve. If this curve is with you, my advice to you, alright. So if I look at the graph here, forget about that one. What is the period? The period is a full cycle. Okay? What do you mean by full cycle? It means I'm going all the way like this, quarter, another quarter, third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So I can see it's 180. So the period in such a situation, you can say it's 180. But if you have that graph, you can simply say, oops, I can do it differently. 360 divided by this 2, which is how much? Also 180. If I give you this, I wouldn't think of that. But if I don't give you that, you can see it from here. How can I see it? Oh, by the way, you can find the period by looking at any 2 consecutive maximum points. Alright, so if this is 45, and if this is 225, subtract them, 225 minus 45 is 180 degrees. So the distance between any 2 maximum, any 2 peaks is the same as full cycle. Actually, it's the same thing between 2 minimum. So if you look at any 2 consecutive minimums, that will give me how much is my period. So you have 3 different ways to see it. Oh, no, you have 4. You have that one. Okay, gentlemen? So simply, this is what we need you to know. You can open your lecture notes, solve the questions that are related to this. If you want me to tell you which questions, I could recommend you, but don't go any further than that. Please, otherwise, you're probably going to waste some time for nothing. I would have suggested question 7, question 5. 4, 5, 7 is pretty good. So, if I were you, the least you can go for it. Very straightforward, no need to show off. And if you solve them, ask your teacher to help you in the class. Hey, by the way, why don't you add question 2 as well? These questions will cover whatever about this topic. Our next session, to use this information, and most importantly, the first lecture, in order to solve trigonometric equations. Like you're solving quadratic equations, linear equations. Inshallah, very soon we'll do something called logarithmic equations. We have something called trigonometric equation. Have a nice day. Good day.